not live yet.
Okay. So the December meeting, I will add as something we need to.
Discuss.
Yes.
We'd
Okay.
We'd have to move.
Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the Omaha Mayor's Commission for Citizens with Disabilities monthly meeting. Today is August 27th, and we're delighted you could join us. For those of you watching the rebroadcast at home, and for those of you here with us in person, it's great to have you. First thing I'm going to do is just remind everyone of the format of the meeting, and then we'll share what was discussed in the pre-meeting, and then we'll get right into today's presentation. So let's see, sorry, I got a little off already on my script. The meetings are rebroadcast on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on Cox Channel 18. And video of our meetings can be viewed at the Disabilities Commission website, which is cityofomaha.org. Click on the Mayor's Office, then click on Disabilities Commission. The purpose of the Omaha Mayor's Commission for Citizens with Disabilities is quite lengthy, and I often change up the sections that I review during this meeting, but what always remains true is the purpose of our group, which is to promote the quality of life, accessibility, and equity in all aspects related to the City of Omaha on behalf of and in cooperation with the citizens of Omaha who experience disabilities. To this end, the Commission will advise the Mayor, City Council, City Department heads, and other City of Omaha personnel on issues of access, representation, employment, housing, and quality of life affecting city citizens with disabilities and their respective families. And one thing that I want to say is in 2018, our commission has really prioritized the way in which we communicate with the mayor's office, city council, and department heads. We've intentionally tried to, be even more communicative than we were. And what we do is we submit a monthly or bi-monthly memo, essentially, that covers kind of a month in review and issues that we've been made aware of by the public. We also discuss updates from our commission. And then what we do is we provide recommendations that are generally tied to the issues that have been presented to us. And so we're thankful to our liaisons in the Department of Human Rights and Relations Office who've helped us make those memos work and make them possible. And we hope that the Mayor's Office, the City Council, and department heads have found those memos useful. I think it helps us to also look at everything on paper and realize, oh yeah, that's good that we recommended that. Keeps us accountable as well. One of the other major aspects of this commission is to promote awareness to the general public on the capabilities, needs, and desires of citizens with disabilities, as well as publicly recognize the efforts of employers, businesses, schools, organizations, and others who have demonstrated outstanding support of programs and services for disabled citizens. And our featured speaker today is going to address quite a few services that the Department of Human Rights and Relations has been really paramount in providing for our citizens with disabilities. So we always like to say, if you're a note taker, have paper and pen ready because this meeting will be riveting and there may or may not be a test later. What I'd like to do is have the members of the commission introduce themselves, and if you could also remind us of your affiliation and the disability of interest and or that you represent. And we'll start over here to my right.
Hi, I'm Natalie Simmons. I'm founder and senior writer of Dotted Eye Writing Services, LLC, and we write grants. And I'm also a mental health advocate.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Mark Smith. I serve on the faculty at the Monroe Meyer Institute, which serves as the University Center for Excellence for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities for the state of Nebraska. It's located on the UNMC campus and as part of UNMC. I'm also the parent of a young man with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as the older sibling of sister with intellectual and developmental disabilities, which is the area of disability I'm here to represent.
And I'm Nancy Floral. I'm the Omaha District Supervisor with the Nebraska Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. We're the vocational rehabilitation agency that serves individuals that are visually impaired, blind, and deafblind.
Hello, I'm Dr. Pete Seiler. I'm on the Nebraska Association for the Deaf Board, and it's the oldest state association of and by a disability organization, and that was founded in 1902. In and of it itself is the primary function is advocacy work for those that are deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing. To ensure that there's effective communication and equality in access to services.
Thank you, Dr. Seiler and others. I realized at the start of the meeting I forgot to introduce myself, so allow myself to introduce myself. My name is Wendy Hamilton, and I have the pleasure of being the chair of the MCCD. My day job is fundraising for Girl Scouts, but in this capacity, I represent adults with autism spectrum disorder. I'm the adult child of a mother with ASD. I also myself have an invisible disability called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So I kind of like to think of myself as a champion for the disabilities that you don't necessarily see. So thank you, everyone. We do have a quorum present today, although we're missing a couple of members who had some scheduling conflicts. But in our pre-meeting, we discussed the minutes from the June meeting. We did not meet in July, and we will have an email vote to approve the June minutes. Someone sent them late. It was me. So we will approve those via email. We also discussed the June and July memo to the mayor's office that our commission will be submitting. And one other thing that Nancy reminded us that we'll discuss at the very end is our meeting schedule for the rest of the year, because all of a sudden we blinked and it's like September. So crazy town. So it is now my pleasure to introduce today's guest speakers, although she is no guest to the MCCD. Rhonda Ewer has been an outstanding liaison for our commission for many years. She is also an ADA expert, ADA coordinator. Today she will be speaking to us in her capacity as the Education and Outreach Manager for the City of Omaha Human Rights and Relations Department. And then I believe she's got another guest with her who she will introduce later.
Thank you. Thank you for having the department here today. I want to just kind of give a brief overview of what the Human Rights and Relations Department does. We are a staff of 11, and we we take complaints and investigate complaints of employment discrimination, housing discrimination, and public accommodation discrimination. And what that means is that if someone believes that they are being treated differently than another individual in the workplace or by a landlord, or just going to a restaurant or a theater, a store, then if they believe it, they can come in and they can tell us what the reason was, what the protected class was that they feel they were discriminated on, and then we will do an investigation of that complaint. And then we do follow up. We write a summary, a determination of cause or no cause finding. And what that means is that we either found reason to believe that discrimination did occur, and that would be a cause finding, or we write a recommendation, a determination that no cause, that we did not have enough evidence to warrant that there was discrimination that occurred. We also, currently I'm the certified ADA coordinator for the City of Omaha. What that means is that that I kind of oversee what is going on with the city's facilities, programs, and services. And that can include working with the liaisons that I have throughout the city in various departments, making sure that our curb cuts are correct, that our facilities, like our community centers, are all accessible, the bathrooms, access in and out of the buildings, even coming to some of our city departments. If you have to go to a city department, that we have accessible counters, and also our website is very important, that we make sure that our city website is accessible to the citizens of Omaha. And in that role, I take complaints. So if a citizen is wanting to address a problem that they're having with one of our city facilities, or maybe it's a swimming pool, they can't access the pool, maybe it's a summer program, it could be a variety of things. And they would contact me, or they can contact the department would contact me, and we will address what we need to do to make a reasonable accommodation or to make a reasonable modification to meet the needs of the community. What else do we do? I wanted to focus a little bit on today, a little bit on fair housing. It is the 50th anniversary of fair housing this year, and I wanted to talk about fair housing law, the act, and how it affects the disability community. Last year, we did do, with the planning, in conjunction with the planning department for the community development block grants, CDBG funds, we did an assessment. And now that assessment is put on hold because it's on hold in Washington, they're trying to reevaluate how that assessment was done nationwide and trying to critique it and make some changes before accepting the draft that we put together of that assessment. But I wanted to speak a little bit about what we found through that assessment on the disability with the disability community. We have had the regional stats showed that Council Bluffs, and we did this as a region, we are submitting it based on the city of Omaha, but we are also submitting based on the region. And the region includes Council Bluffs, Bellevue, and Omaha. And our regional stats for the 2015 census actually show that the population of Council Bluffs is around 61,310, and there are 9,800 disabilities in the Council Bluffs area. That's saying that there's about a 16% population that has some type of disability challenge. In Bellevue, the population of Bellevue is around 53,332. They have a disability community of 5,738, which is right at 10% of their population has some type of disability challenge. In Omaha, we have a population of 434,782, and the estimate of the disability community is around 46,534, or right around 10%. But when you take those three metro or areas, that brings us up to around a 36% population that has some type of disability challenge in our metro area. That's not counting La Vista, that's not counting Ralston, it's not Gretna, it's Omaha, Bellevue, and Council Bluffs. And so when we look at that's saying that over a third of our population has some type of disability challenge. So we as a public really should be educating ourselves on what that means. What does a disability look like? What is a disability? I know so many people want to look at and think about, when they're thinking about a disability, they're thinking of the person parking in the handicap parking and seeing the signage for the wheelchair. But that doesn't mean that the person parking there has a mobility disability. It could be an invisible disability. It could be somebody that's taking that individual to the store and that person is blind, and they could actually be, walking in, but they're parking there because of the disability that they're associated with. And so we need to be careful about how we're judging individuals in the community. It could also be that the person has COPD. They could walk fine. There's not a walker. There's not a cane. There's not a wheelchair, but it's an invisible disability. And so we need to make sure that we're not judging that, because that person could have heart trouble and they just can't walk more than 50 feet or 100 feet. It could be they have COPD or asthma. All of these things are a major life activity obstruction, a challenge. And so we want to make sure that people become aware and educate themselves. We want them integrated. We want to make sure that the disability community has choice to housing. In Omaha, there's a very low number of housing availability for accessible housing, and we need to be working with developers, architects, people that are landlords, people that are involved in the housing development and neighborhoods to make sure that we're looking at affordable housing, because so many of our disabled individuals in the community are on SSI or Social Security, and their income is fixed. It's limited to maybe $700 a month, or it's limited to $1,200 a month. And when you think about what rent is costing, around $600 to $700, that pretty much eats up everything that they get for the month. So we want to make sure that the community is educated about affordability in housing. Housing complaints, the disability discrimination complaints have been on the rise since 2000, and that outnumbers any other type of protected class, including over and above race, sex, and familial status. Let's see. The barriers. The disability rights laws were enacted because people with disabilities were being denied the right to participate fully in American life. To ensure equal rights with people with disabilities must be able to have that accessibility to housing choice. They also have to have access to transportation, schools, health services, and other public accommodations. When I think about housing, I think about the house in the middle of your world, and you venture out to all these other pathways, whether it's your schools, your employer, your medical facility, your church, and that house needs to be accessible not just by entering it and being able to move around in your home, but also to move to and from all of your necessities of getting your groceries, going to church, whatever that might look like in your life. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. You shared a really great statistic, and Natalie and I both missed it.
Oh, okay.
You said disability claims have been on the rise, and then you said something there more for housing, but there's more than.
They
said
exceed,
outnumbers
they're
any-
over and above race, sex, and familial status.
That was it. Thank you.
No problem. We want to make sure that we as a community look at removing architectural barriers, providing accommodations and reasonable modifications to equal access. Barriers which prevent a person with disabilities from full enjoyment and use of the premises. And some of these barriers are not always physical structural issues, but they can be policies, practices, procedures, the internet, advertising, the use of auxiliary aids, interpreters, and in many cases it can be our attitudes. Unfortunately, sometimes our attitudes are out of fear. It can be that some people might feel like they are above another person because they're not disabled, and unfortunately we may not be as helpful or courteous or feel burdened to assist. Our attitudes may change when we don't know how to address someone who is disabled. So again, we want to make sure that as a person that we are actually making an effort to learn what it is to be have proper etiquette for those that are disabled or have a disability challenge. Not everybody wants the door opened for them. They're capable and independent. They're able to do that on their own. So, just to keep in mind your attitude as well. And the Fair Housing Act recognizes disability as an impairment that may be cognitive, developmental, intellectual, mental, physical, sensory, or some combination. Like walking or some type of mobility, deaf and or hard of hearing, blind or visually impaired, intellectual impairment, unseen disabilities like I've mentioned before. That can also be like a PTSD, a post-traumatic stress disorder, witnessing a life-threatening event, a car accident, war from our military veterans. Other unseen disabilities, like I've said, are heart trouble, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. I share the information just because I don't want Omaha to look like they're, that they're uneducated. I want them to take an interest in their neighbor and understand what they might be experiencing. We all go through our path and journey in life, but we may not always be paying attention to what's going on next door to us or around us. Just as an example, I've got a couple of examples here I wanted to share. Putting yourself in the place of a person with disability trying to access a business or a restaurant with 8 or 10 of your friends or your family members, and find out once you get there, you have a reservation possibly, but you cannot eat at the establishment because they cannot access the building or a table or a restroom. That business who is not accessible is not losing one customer, but they're losing the other 8 to 10 that are with that family or group of friends. And they're going to go somewhere else. So that's business lost, and that's, the businesses in the community need to understand that as well. The disability community has an economic impact on the community. They have things that they need to purchase, they have entertainment that they want to go to, and they need to have access to those venues. One other thing, let's see. In the Human Rights and Relations Department, we've had cases where landlords have provided appropriate parking for their disabled tenants and residents, but maybe it is still too far away. So when they are requesting direct access to a lobby door, that may mean just making a small change. It could be making a parking, actually a regular parking stall, turn it into a disabled parking stall or a reserved parking stall for that particular tenant so that they can have access. That's minimal. It's not a financial burden. They can do a curb cut. Most modifications and most modifications for fair housing are paid for by the tenant. The landlords are not there. They have to take into consideration and be open to accommodating that modification, but they're not totally responsible for paying for that modification. And we've also contracted, the department over the years has contracted with Fair Housing Center of Nebraska and Iowa, and we've contracted with them to conduct testing of accessibility of apartment complexes, and have found and initiated complaints from our department on behalf of disabled tenants. Not that they made the complaint, but through the testing, we were able to actually file based on the City of Omaha filing that complaint. And that can be access to aisles, inaccessible kitchens, bathrooms, narrow door widths and passageways, insurmountable thresholds, and switches, light switches and outlets, environmental controls within the units of some of the apartments. And so I guess as a community, we need to work diligently to try and address these disability issues, whether it's housing or employment or the public accommodations, as all citizens do have that right of full and equal enjoyment to living. where they live, work, and play, and attend events. So, any questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
I was wondering, on the average, how many complaints do you handle a year, do you know?
For housing complaints, we run around 25 to 30. We've been as high as 35. Employment, we have been down a little bit. I think, it could be due to the economy. But last year, I think we did, for our contract with the EEOC, we did about 25. But then we also have the ordinance ones, and I would say we probably do 15 to 20 of those a year as well. Plus public accommodation, about another 15. So 15 and 20 is 35, and another 25 is 60, and then 35. So we're probably close to around 100 a year overall.
And then I have one other question, and you may not be able to answer this, but just the city of Omaha, it's probably one of the larger employers here in Omaha. Do you know how many individuals that they hire or have on staff that are disabled?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I can
Bye.
get you that
Okay,
information.
just curious.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk a little bit about restaurants. For a deaf or hard of hearing individual, despite whether you have grown up with that disability or you have been a military and you're coming back and you're a veteran now and have lost those services, oftentimes we encounter restaurants and bars that have TVs mounted everywhere. Occasionally, they might have one television that's captioned and it's, way tucked into the corner of the bar. And I want to know, can the city enforce the venue to have closed caption available on all of the televisions, especially when considering the noise level, hearing people aren't even able to hear what's on the television anyway, so the captioning actually benefits everyone in that setting.
That's true. In answer to your question, no, we do not have the ability to enforce Title III, other than if you were in the restaurant or the bar and that was something that you wanted and needed and did not have accessible. The table is on the other side of the room and you cannot see the one that is on for closed captioning. Of course, you can ask the bartender or the restaurant owner or manager to put on another TV, or come file a complaint with us and that you do not feel that you believe that you have the same rights as somebody else sitting there.
I have a follow-up question to that, if you don't mind. Mark, do you mind just one more moment? Talking about employment issues, I think it's similar to Nancy's question, but a little different. The governor of Nebraska, 3 months ago, announced that the economy was doing so well, was having a hard time finding people to actually hire. But at the same time, we have folks with disabilities that are screaming that no one will hire them. Mm-hmm. So what does the city have planned to hire individuals to fill these vacant positions?
Well, we do, and I'd be speaking on behalf of the HR department, but, we do indicate on all of our applications that, obviously anybody is welcome to apply. So they need to apply, and they do need to meet the qualifications of the job. And anyone can go out to the city's website, the Human Resources website, and pull up public documents or public forms. And under job descriptions, they can pull up that job description that's posted and look at it and make sure they meet all of the qualifications and then apply for the job. Many of the city's jobs do have a supplemental questionnaire, so that's directly related to that job. So that answers a lot of questions about whether or not you can do that job or you have experience doing that job. But that is the normal process. So they're not looking at, whether the person's specifically disabled or have a challenge. And then, if they're in an interview, and they do need a modification or reasonable accommodation, they can obviously ask for that.
Thank you.
Yes, Mark?
To take you back to your discussion on housing, you talked, Rhonda, about kind of the percentages of individuals with disabilities in the Omaha, Bellevue, and Council Bluffs areas, and we're equating that to the concern about available accessible housing. And in my experience, I found that it can be quite difficult in that a lot of the affordable housing tends to be like in the eastern Omaha area. They tend to be older homes, and so a lot of the things that folks, for example, need that are in wheelchairs are problematic in terms of the width of doors, et cetera, and that houses like that, if they're going to be utilized, or need fairly significant updating. But I didn't really get a sense in terms of what we're looking at as far as the number of individuals that are seeking housing but aren't able to get it. And I think that would be important to point out as part of your discussion, just in terms of because from my perspective and in terms of the folks that I'm here to represent, it's significant. There are innumerable circumstances where folks struggle to find, reasonable living circumstances that are affordable and accessible. Can you speak a little bit more to that, or?
Well, I can tell you that part of the affirmatively furthering fair housing goals, even though that process has been put on hold, the city has taken those goals and put them in their analysis of impediments, which is over the next 5 years. And so we will be working with developers, landlords, and architects, others. We work all the time with MAPA, the Metropolitan Area Planning Agency, on housing issues. They have a housing committee, and all of you are welcome. Anybody in the community is welcome to contact MAPA and join. It's Heartland 2050 Housing and Development Committee, and talk about it. I have tried to make sure that the disability community has not been forgotten, because that is where we have a very low number of housing units and accessible units for the community. But once that analysis of impediments is completed, which I want to say it is, because I want to say June 30th was the cutoff date for any public comments. And so if you'd like, I can see if I can get a copy before your next meeting.
Well, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rhonda, I just want to thank you, because I think that you work very hard at making sure all these surveys get out to us, and you send them numerous times and encouraging us, to share it with our consumers so that we're getting as much feedback for these surveys. So
Well,
thank you so much.
I know people are tired of taking surveys, but it's still, the public needs to understand that's the only way we know what's going on, what the needs are. So I hope everyone continues to fill them out and submit them.
And it's a powerful way of using their voice about what their
It
needs
is.
are.
I have a question. I know we still have a little bit more of the presentation to go, so I want to be mindful of time, but kind of dovetailing on Mark's question as well, can you tell us a little bit about how your department interfaces with HUD and OHA,
Sure.
Housing Urban Development, and Omaha Housing Authority?
We have a work share agreement with the Housing Urban Development Department. And what that means is that when someone comes in and files a complaint with us on housing, it is what we call dual filed. So you're filing with our agency and with the Housing and Urban Development Agency of the federal government. And then they reimburse us for cases that we do for them. And OHA, Omaha Housing Authority, we do not do cases with them because of conflict of interest, only because the city funds, they get federal funding and they get funding from the city of Omaha. Because we are a city department, it is considered a conflict of interest to investigate their complaints.
Complaints against them, or
Discrimination, any
against?
kind of, against OHA.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
are you ready for Christian?
Yeah.
Christian. I would like to introduce Christian Espinoza. He is our small emerging business program administrator, and he is going to talk today a little bit about the small and emerging business and our economic inclusion program, and kind of tie it into so that the disability community understands that this exists and that they have the ability to apply and be authorized, as well as look for contracts within the city government. Christian, thank you.
Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. As Rhonda said, my name is Christian Espinoza, and I'm the Small and Emerging Business and Economic Inclusion Program Administrator right now. We're in the process of hiring one more person for that area. And what I do basically is to try to register and authorize small and emerging businesses with the city. What it is in 2009, if I remember correctly, Nebraska abolished affirmative action. So it used to be a gender and minority business program. Well, since that changed, we have to make it on small and emerging businesses. And we look at the income, personal income and average gross income from every company to participate in this program. The advantage of this program is like there are some bids in the city of Omaha that are exclusively for these small and emerging businesses. The main purpose of this is to increase the participation of these small businesses and to grow. As they grow, they hire more people, they contribute more into the taxes, and people get more jobs, and they contribute to the city as general. There is some requirements. The main requirements is to bring the last 3 years of the federal tax incomes for personal and the company. It is a race and gender neutral, so anybody who has a company who wants to do business with the city, they can register with us. The other advantage of this program is that OPS uses our inventory to set up their bids. So right now they have a big one coming up, and they're going to be using the City of Omaha list to send all the information and the bids that they need. So only the companies who are registering with us are eligible to participate in the OPS bids. Questions so far? Mm-hmm.
You said race and gender neutral,
Right.
but not disability neutral.
Right. So basically, anybody who meet the monetary standards are eligible to participate or to apply for our program.
So you're saying only race or gender? I guess I'm looking at what about the disability community specifically?
There is no restriction for the disability community.
One of the questions is it necessary to spell that out, that it is also, don't discriminate against those with disabilities?
Right.
Or are you saying that it's sort of assumed?
It's not spelled out in the ordinance. It's just based on income, is what it says. Like you cannot exceed some type of personal income or gross income from the company. So basically, it is not. There is a distinctions between the federal government, where they have their minority, the disability programs for contracts. In the city, we don't have any program targeted specifically to that population. So this program is open.
So you wouldn't be at risk of being cited for discrimination against
No.
disability?
No.
Okay. I think it's probably an awareness
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's what I was looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
I think the more, we're just learning about this program, so it's not like we're super familiar with it, but I think the more awareness that it is complete, as long as, check this box, everybody else is eligible.
Right.
That's what's kind of, we're always kind of looking for that to make sure that, we don't have to come to Rhonda's department and say, we think there's a discrimination here.
Right. So basically, if you have any type of disability but you have your own business, you can apply to our program. If you make the requirements, you are set to go.
Okay.
So you're going to be sending some information of the bids coming up and whatever you need, and so for the OPS.
Okay.
The other part of what I do is the economic inclusion program. In 2015, City Council came with a resolution about improving the sections of the poverty areas in the city of Omaha. And what they are trying to do is to get more businesses, small emerging businesses, and people to participate in city contracts. Many of them, because of the capacity of the size of the projects that the city have, they cannot participate. They don't have the capacity to do that. So with economic inclusion, Tribes is like any company who is consulting, meaning architectural or construction companies, who gets contracts with the city, they should include a plan where they're going to involve small and emerging businesses. They were hired from the disadvantaged areas of the city, and they will create programs to make sure that youth go into the STEM industry or to the construction company. So they are, as an example, if HDR have a program directly in the North Star, they are trying to make more kids from the North High School to go into the architectural or engineer program. So they have to give me reports every 4 months to make sure that they are doing what they say to do in those plans. If they don't have an approved plan, they cannot bid with the city.
I just was remembering, I think I saw an article about, it was either North Star or, is it both North Star and North High School that
Yeah,
partner with HDR? I just remember seeing an article recently about the success of that program, and I think some of the students, they got to share their architectural designs, and I'm not sure if anything was actually constructed, but I was sort of like, wow.
Yeah, there are
That's
some.
amazing.
I know there are some of the architectural companies partnered together, and they have a program right now in the Salvation Army sport, the one in South Omaha, the
Kroc
Kroc
Center.
Center. So they have a program in the Kroc Center, and so they partner together, and they are showing 6th graders how the sewer separation works and what they are doing and what is necessary to have that in the city. So they create a model of how the sewer in Omaha works and how everything goes in one pipe. So they build it with popsicle sticks, like 2 different pipes, and they show how the sewer separation works. And I think it was kind of impressive. And the kids were actually building it. So there are so many programs, and in that part, in the disability, I mean, I haven't seen any projects, and it's up to the primes to do whatever they need to, but there is a potential there to involve more people with disability to be part of those kind of youth outreach.
So in terms of the activities that you're involved with and that you're promoting, do you have instances where individuals with disabilities are being supported through these programs, or?
Well, the plans that I have seen so far, I haven't seen anything related to disability right now, but still there is a potential.
Certainly.
And I cannot force any of the companies to go exactly there, but it's up to the disability community to reach out to all these engineer and architectural communities and say like, hey, we have a group of youth with disabilities that might be benefit for one of your programs that you are designing already that are required by the city.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a really wonderful program, and one of the things that we find, although we hear a lot about, that the state of the economy in Nebraska and Omaha is very good, when we look at the number of individuals with disabilities who are unemployed, it's still significantly higher, and that's been a tough one in terms of trying to get, there's many folks are working very hard to try and get those numbers down, and it's been very difficult to do. And this seems like more of a front-end proactive approach to supporting folks to either start their own businesses or through an educational experience, learn some skills that they can take with them into a job.
I may have maybe misunderstood. You had talked about the program, and you said that it's funded by the city of Omaha, yes?
Yes, well, I manage two programs. One is the Small and Emerging Businesses, and the other one is the Economic Equity and Inclusion Program. And they are part of the city.
And you were commenting about the programs that were helping the students. And you were saying, you made a comment that, of course, you couldn't force anybody to include children with disabilities. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Well, it's not like include. Every time that an engineer or architectural company get a contract that is depends $100,000 for architecturals and $500,000 for engineers, they have to give an economic plan. In that plan, they will say what they are gonna do, and it is up to me to approve what they say or not. I cannot tell them what to do specifically. It have to come from them.
If I can jump in, sorry.
Please, Wendy.
No, I think, because I had the same kind of question for a second. I think, if I'm understanding, and correct us if we're wrong, Christian is saying that he can't enforce the project idea or how the project is going to play out. So it's not like it's excluding people with disabilities, it's just not his job to direct the project.
Right.
Is that what you were, does that clarify?
In one way, yes,
Okay.
it does. Thank you. But what I'm thinking about is in the process of funding, you can determine if the plan, is inclusive of certain predetermined things, criteria.
Right.
Hiring disabled individuals, and if you don't have the number, at its minimum qualification, then they would not receive the grant fully. So I'm not sure why we couldn't use the power of money to influence individuals out there seeking these opportunities to be inclusive of disabilities.
Right.
And I'm not grumpy about it at all, but I'm just thinking, we're talking about, race and gender, and we're thinking, okay, we're not going to worry about that, but then we're still screaming, hey, look at us over here, the disability community.
The way that the resolution is done for the Economic Equity and Inclusion Plan, what we can do is encourage companies to do that. But there is no legal matter that we can do based on the resolution that we can enforce that. The way that is write it down, we can only encourage people to reach out.
Really, though? Even with
Yeah.
the ADA?
Well, the way that it's written, ordinance, it is what it is. I mean, we cannot force them to actually hire anybody. We will be invasive of their own company, but we can strongly encourage.
So can we make a recommendation? I mean, and it's a recommendation, of course, there's no promise to fulfill it, but could we make a recommendation that you said it was a resolution, is that the
It's
right
a
word?
resolution.
Maybe be revised or updated to specifically, and explicitly say this is also non-discriminatory against those with disabilities? I mean, we could
You
make that
can-
recommendation, right?
You can put the language there, but again, since it's a resolution, it is not mandatory.
Right. Okay.
I mean, and the other party is that there is a fine line of what the companies can do and do. They have to have some requirements by law that they cannot discriminate against anybody.
Right.
So they have to have that, and they provide that information with those. If we go that step further, there would be invasive of the company based on the federal law requirements.
Interesting.
So by federal law, they should be required to not discriminate against
Right.
people with disabilities. Based on that,
Okay.
we assume that they are doing the due diligence based on the federal law on that.
And I was just going to add, because I think as a part of Rhonda's presentation, she talks about one of the issues is the public attitude. And so I serve blind, visually impaired, and deafblind. I bet the average person would say no one that would be blind, visually impaired, or deafblind is going to be an architect or an engineer, but that's not true.
Right.
And so I think that education piece, would be really imperative of how we can reach employers, because what we're finding is it's the attitudes that our consumers face every day when it comes to employment.
Right, and what I recommend when people from the community reach out to me and say, like, how can we do that? Is like, well, just think about who gets the projects from the city when in terms of architectural or construction companies, and say, like, hey, we are aware of this resolution and there is some program, so we would like you to partner with us and to involve more the disability community in these kind of projects or in this kind of plans that you provide to the city. So it will be up to you guys to reach out to them.
You could follow the contracts
Yeah.
and know what contracts are being given and then reach out to whoever gets those contracts.
Do you open, when you open up bids or whatever for contracts, is there any opportunity for education for when they're coming in to learn about how to do the contracting with the city, to be able to talk about
And
inclusion?
that's the reason I bring this one. So the REACH program is contracted by the city and is a Omaha Chamber of Commerce program. So what they do is pure educational system. And I want to give you a whole packet to the chair.
Thank you.
So basically, the REACH program reach out to people and their names say it, and provide educational systems. How can they bid for the city? How to open a new businesses? How to develop your business? How to be more participatory in all the government bids? Because it's not an easy task. I mean, people get overwhelmed because we ask for a lot of information sometimes, but it's information that we need. So if you contact them, they will be more than happy to help out and try to walk you through the process of bidding. So they are actually hired to do that.
I have a question that might be more related to the Economic Equity and Inclusion Plan Program. Or actually, I'll just ask my question and you can tell me if it applies to either of your programs. Oh gosh, and we're almost out of time. I was just going to ask a question about universal design and if that's something that you've been hearing come up in any of your conversations. That's another area of interest. I'm assuming you're familiar with it. It's sort of making new spaces as accessible as possible. I think it also includes some environmental sustainability. Correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody knows. Okay. So when we were when you were talking about also like the projects that the kids choose, just wondering if that was another like. Could you make recommendations and say, make sure you're keeping in mind universal design, that kind of
Every
thing?
time that they give me a plan, I said like, oh, sometimes when they said like, oh, I have no idea what to do, I can give them a list of options, and they can choose.
So that's something also this commission could send to you as a
Yeah, you can send me
recommendation
a
for your
list,
students?
and when somebody asks like, hey, my company is very concerned about this, and we don't know exactly what to do, what would you recommend? I can say like, well, there are tons of projects that you can do. Here is a list.
Cool.
You can choose whatever you want.
Well, and there are partner agencies in the community they can also reach out to get
Right.
information. So it's not just a matter of a static list, but it can also be, opportunities to partner with experts in universal design in order to kind of approach a particular problem or issue.
Right, and yeah, and there
We
is
can give you that list too.
And that is true. I mean, the community have that opportunity. It's a tool that you can use to reach out to them and make sure that they are included in the disability population too.
And will we be able to put the contact information for the REACH program and that as a part of the minutes and broadcast?
For sure. I stole it and I meant to move it around the table. Sorry. Can we pass it this way? And then we'll also share it in, Natalie, we'll make sure she gets the info for the minutes. Okay. Any other questions for Christian?
I have just one final comment. I do understand that things cost money. But as a taxpayer, things benefit me.
Right.
Those things benefit me. And so when I say I pay taxes, when people who need the money and receive my money, but yet they're not giving back to me what I need. So as a taxpayer, that's just my final comment.
All right.
Well, and I would add one more comment quickly. Would it be reasonable to think like maybe after a period of time, maybe you can come back and talk to us about, we've kind of tossed some ideas around and see which, where things are at in terms of things like education and progress towards more inclusion of individuals with disabilities through the program.
And one thing that I can do is, I don't remember exactly the name, but I think there is an organization that involves people with disabilities that are business owners. Or we can partner with the Chamber of Commerce if they know of any organization, and I can do a presentation of what involves to get their
Yeah.
small and emerging businesses registered with the city. I can do a presentation right there, and if they qualify, and we can authorize them to be part of this program.
I think that would be a great start. I mean, I know it's a work in progress, and like, as we started our pre-meeting, these kinds of things don't happen overnight.
Right.
It's not a sprint. These are
Right.
systematic changes that take thoughtful and intentional energy. But I think it is really nice for us to feel that our that we have somewhere to give recommendations, and I appreciate you being open to the
Definitely.
lists that may or may not be coming your way, and as a follow-up.
Right.
In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and close. Thank you so much, Christian,
Thank you
for
so much.
presenting. I think we learned a lot. It was really fascinating. And of course, thank you to Rhonda. We always learn from you. We always appreciate your hard work. We have just a quick, maybe 30 seconds per commissioner if you have any announcements on behalf of your organization or interest, disability interest. We're going to go this way. We'll start with Dr. Seiler. If you have any announcements.
Next month in September, I'm hoping to have a program that I'll be able to share. It's a service offering to those folks who are deaf and hard of hearing. That may be of interest to those who are seniors, to our military veterans, people who have lost hearing as a result of varying reasons. So I encourage people to stay tuned for what's coming next month.
Ooh, the anticipation. You will obviously keep us updated on that, Dr. Seiler?
Well, it's a big secret. No, I will be happy to share that information with you all.
Thank you.
I don't have any announcements.
Very briefly, coming up pretty soon at the Monroe Meyer Institute is our second annual Trunk or Treat activity. I don't have a date for that yet, but I'll provide it and make sure it gets onto the website as quickly as possible. It's an opportunity for children with disabilities and their siblings and any child to have a trick-or-treating experience in a safe and environment, and it's just a lot of fun. So I'll provide more information as we go.
Thank you.
Thanks. I don't have any announcements today.
I have just one announcement on behalf of the Autism Society of Nebraska. I might have alluded to this in June, but it's actually happening now. ASN is currently undergoing a pretty significant strategic planning process, which might sound super boring and like, why am I announcing that? Except to say that it is long overdue, and it will definitely help to further the mission, which is to improve the quality of life of all Nebraskans affected by autism, which includes the individual as well as their family and their caregiver. So we were making jokes earlier. We were kind of calling each other, geeks and nerds and dorks. And so I'm really geeking out over ASN's strategic planning process. So I'm happy to be able to share that. I would like to give a huge thank you to Pam, whose fingers of fire have been keeping up with us today. Thank you so much. As well as to Matt and Chris, who make our technology happen. Thank you very much for being with us as always. The next meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 24th. And I think offline we'll talk about the rest of the meetings for the rest of 2018, because I don't know if our loyal viewers are super interested in our schedules, our personal schedules. And with that, I'd like to adjourn. Any further thoughts or anything? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.